Hello Woolly Thrill Seekers, welcome to my Woolly PhD. I'm Liz Scarf and this is a weekly vlog about my PhD in anthropology, all about wool, what I'm learning this week and what I'm making. You can find a brief overview of the project in the introductory video if you want to kind of get the big picture. And yeah, but this week I've been doing everything. So this has been my first week on campus. And I don't think I've got one particular topic to share this week because I've just been reading all over the place. And also things have gotten very real in terms of really understanding what do I need to do to get away on my field work. So that's great. Once I move past the slight overwhelm of like, oh, it's a lot. And because I want to go quite quickly, I'm kind of got a bit of a time crunch. So yeah, but I feel like I'm clear about what I need to do, so that's nice. But anyway, so what have I been reading? Because I said I've got something so funny to share. Anyway, I'll get to that. So what have I been reading? I finally finished A Short History of the World According to Sheep by Sally Coulthard. And this was really great. This is not academic reading and it's really quite easy and really interesting. And so recommend that one. But yes, I got to finish that. And then I started The Nutmeg's Curse by Amitav Ghosh. Now, this is not about sheep or wool or anything like this, but I am reading it because it's one of the few, I think that's true, examples of literature where, so non-fiction literature where an inanimate, an object has been put at the centre of the story. I haven't quite got to that bit yet. I must say, to start with at least, this is quite harrowing. I don't know that I recommend it for everyone. There's stories of colonial massacres in there at the start, which are really pretty intense. So just that's a bit of a heads up about that. But similar to A Mushroom at the End of the World, where the mushroom is put at the centre, Nutmeg's at the centre of these stories. Just haven't quite gotten into that yet. He's just sort of starting to go into the arguments for centering Nutmeg in the story, I think. And he's also not an anthropologist. He's an investigative journalist, I think. Very well recognised. Anyway, it's a really, so far, it's good but intense. So that's what I'm on to. The other thing, I started listening to a fiction, it's a novel, and it's called 3 Bags Full, and it's by Leonie Swan. And bless Leonie Swan, she has written a murder mystery novel from the perspective of a flock of sheep. And it is so darling and it is really funny. Like, I'm laughing out loud in public, funny as I'm listening to this. But, oh yeah, it just makes me laugh thinking about it. They're so cute. Anyway, but what's really cool about this, right? So the point of view is the point of view of different sheep in this flock. What I really love is how sensory-based and particularly smell-based the narrative is, right? And so she's obviously, gone into some creative process of her own to, and maybe a lot of observations of sheep, right, to develop these ideas. But so these sheep have these belief systems that are very based around their sensory experience. And one of them is that the sheep aren't sure whether humans have souls or not, right? Because humans can't smell very well. And sheep know, of course, that the soul is based in your sense of smell. And it's just really, it's cute and it's funny how she does it. And it's just really, I think it's really, really cool in terms of how we develop narratives in culture, and just these really creative ways of narrative making, using senses. And because my research is trying to focus on senses particularly, I think I'm finding it really instructive as well as just really funny. Cannot recommend it enough. So I've just borrowed it from my library through the Libby Library app. So that one's available for nothing if you're a library member. So those are some of the things I've been reading in the non-academic space. And then I had a little field trip. So last weekend, so I'm in Canberra now. I got to Canberra on like late on the Thursday night. So on the Sunday, I'm at my first yarn store. But this is out in about half an hour drive outside of Canberra, called Wattle Yarns. And they've got alpacas and llamas and goats and a few different kinds of animals on their place. And you can buy alpaca fleeces from them. But they also, Wattle is a yarn dyer. And so I buy their yarn from Maker in Melbourne. So I was like, I get to go out to the actual property and see their full range. And anyway, so I went out there on Sunday, bought a bunch of yarn for the Thru lines, sort of shawl, massive scarf thing by Drea Renee Knits that I'm going to be knitting. Anyway, I got chatting with Angela, who owns the place. And anyway, so I can't remember what we're chatting about. I eventually was telling her about my research. It's like, oh, you should come out for the dyeing days, Thursdays, Fridays, come out. This is when we dye and, come and check it out. And I was like, cool, okay. So I went out there on Thursday and they just kind of, because they teach classes out there, they'd organise themselves to just kind of really grab me, pull me in and teach me how to dye yarn by really just doing it. So Joe, hi Joe if you're watching this, Joe, the dyer extraordinaire out there, just like got in and taught me. She's a really great educator. She's a tertiary educator. And yeah, just showed me the ropes. And I very quickly understood why my cardigan got all blotchy, if you've watched previous episodes about the dyeing debacle of that cardigan. So I know what to do differently next time I attempt to dye a garment. But it was really, really cool. But one thing that was really evident too in the way Joe was talking about the dyeing process, but also the actual doing of it, was of course how much their dyeing knowledge, the technology of dyeing was developed through doing. So it was a learning through the body and through the bodily practice of actually doing the thing. And one thing that was so cool, right, is there's like this litre jug of dye to pour on this yarn. And Joe says, I can now just tell how much is half a litre as she pours, right? So she could pour half a litre and she just feels it in her arm muscles, right? She doesn't necessarily like have a cognitive, but can just feel when half a litre is poured. And this is really, really cool. And I was just thinking about it's not ironic, kind of maybe, but about the interesting intersection of researcher practitioner too, right? And also about different ways of developing and generating knowledge, and how much of maker practices and craft practices, the knowledge is developed as a bodily skill. And yeah, and then when you go to inquire in this from an academic perspective as well, what does that do to knowledge generation? Or I don't know, how does it change knowledge and making practices maybe? Anyway, I'm very interested in this kind of being located in this position as a maker, crafter, researcher. That's really interesting to me. So I've been starting to read a bit more about that and how to sort of do that, which is that's really interesting. So I set up my desk in the postgraduate research area, and I got my electronic spinning machine there too, and I'm making it a habit that first thing in the morning when I get in there, before I turn the computer on or look at an article or anything, is I spin one of my Rolex for my sweater spin. And that just trying to really keep the making part of this alive, because there's so much kind of reading to do and thinking to do. It's so easy because making practices are also culturally more marginal, certainly in Western cultures. I'm also trying to make it a bodily practice of not marginalising the making. So that's been really interesting, and just kind of helping me try to keep a foot in both parts of identity of making and researching. Although it even just occurs to me as I'm thinking about it, just the splitting of them is problematic, right? Because making is a form of research. Anyway, that's one of the things I'm thinking about a lot this week and reading. Anyway, this week I feel like I've read a million articles, which I haven't. I've just read across a bunch of different topics, so it just feels like a lot. But one that's really grabbing me at the moment is the work of South Australian academic Susan Luckman. And Susan she researches and writes a lot about craft skills and the craft economy, which is like, I think, Etsy and lots of these kind of sole trader, small maker designer business people, primarily women actually. And she also writes in there's a lot of intersecting kind of cultural factors there too, right, around gender, rural locations. And she's a prolific writer, and so I've only just scratched the surface. But reading also about the resurgence and kind of the hugely how handmade, like the handmade is now hugely popular again. It was very popular in the 1970s in Western cultures, but of course very local because of no internet. And how the handmade is seeing a resurgence, which is facilitated by the internet, but it's not caused by it per se. Anyway, so just, reading a bit about and thinking about why is the handmade so popular, again, as a cultural process. And I'm also reading a bit more of Jane Bennett's work, and they're both exploring this in different ways. And there's lots of different reasons which I haven't really got to read into yet, but it does make me think about why do I think it is. And so I'm also interested in about what do you think it is. If you're watching this, it's because you're also interested in the handmade, probably, and you also notice an increasing popularity. So why do you think it is? I'm quite lucky because I have a daughter who's in her mid-20s, and so getting to sort of hear a lot about that generation's exposure, certainly I guess from her perspective, to cottagecore, and why their perspective on why it's so interesting to them. I guess at the moment I tend to think it's a bit of a disenchantment with the sort of promise of progress and modernity, right? Like modern culture and all these ways in which life will be easier because we outsource lots of the making and the movement and the creation of things in our lives, and it's created a certain alienation, like we're too far away from where our food comes from, where our clothes come from, where like the basics of our lives come from. And yeah, that we're rediscovering the benefits of making things with our own hands, or even just the one step removed. Like if you know the person who made the thing, and it might not be like a family, like a friend or relative, right? It could just be a buyer. But in this kind of craft economy, sellers kind of, they're known to their buyers through social media accounts somewhat. Not only, but a lot of them are kind of somehow known. There's a performance of identity that they put out there where we kind of go, oh, like I've got some connection with this person now, and I'd rather buy from someone who I've got a connection to. And so this also makes us feel less alienated from that production process. So that's really interesting. And this is another concept I came across, but I can't remember. I read it in Bennett, but I can't remember whose concept it was. It was about cool capitalism. So I might have to make a different video about that when I can actually have the person's name to hand. But anyway, you could just go off and Google that one. Anyway, so that's a little bit of a mishmash of all the things I've kind of been learning about this week in the PhD. There's no particular coherent theme there, except maybe making with bodies. I don't know. Anyway, maybe I don't need a theme every week. What have I been making? I am still plodding away on the pyramid cloud Cardi, and I just, it feels like a lot of fabric going on here, and I really need to do a size check, and I'm scared to do a size check, so I have been putting that off, and then I keep knitting, which I know I'm not the only person who does that, who just goes into denial about size and just keeps knitting. So I'm going to try and stop that today and do a size check, and then see whether it's good news or bad news and what to do about that, because I'm not sure I want to pull back any of that. Anyway, so that's that. I also, while I was cooking the other day and waiting for things to cook, started my very first face washer, which is a bit funny because, you know, face washes are often something you knit when you start to knit. I started knitting socks because I'm just an ambitious learner. I like to dive in the deep end. Doesn't look like much at the moment because I've got it all scrunched up. But it's a cotton, just a pretty, I don't know, cotton thing I got from somewhere. And I think it's a little bit loose. I think the needles, I might do smaller next time. But I just made the pattern up. Well, basically I'm just doing, what am I doing? Moss stitch. And moss and seed stitches are like my favourite stitch. And I have never made anything with them except like maybe the heel of a sock. But it's also a little bit of an experiment in testing my own sort of pattern structure recognition. So can I tell, you know, what the last row, did I start on the purl or the knit? And actually so far it's going well. I haven't kind of muffed it up. So I'm really quite pleased with that, even though it's a very simple project. It feels like a little bit, I don't know, when I first started or got back into knitting, I could not tell on my needles whether what was below the previous stitch was a purl or a knit. Like I've got a piece of ribbing from a cardigan I started and didn't finish. It's just like a total disaster because I couldn't see. And so it's really nice to notice, oh, I can see it now. And that's really cool. I also have been making progress on something I haven't shared before, but this is a Musselburgh beanie, that's the pattern by Ysolda, and I think I've knit 3 of these now, and they're fantastic. So there's subtle colour differences. Oh, let me see if I can get this up to the camera properly. And I'm just doing kind of random stripes, but this yarn, it's from New Zealand. I got it, I went to New Zealand last year. I was so lucky. New Zealand is so beautiful. This is a possum merino blend, but the merino yarn in it, well, it's recycled, some kind of repurposed or recycled wool. It's the second time I've knit with a repurposed recycled wool, and it does have a different texture to newly processed. And that first one I did, it was knitting for Olive, I think, has a repurposed wool. I didn't like the texture, so I actually took the unused balls back to the store and got something else. This, I think the possum helps with the texture. You can still feel it's not the same as like a possum merino that's freshly milled, but it's nice. It's actually really, really nice. And with the Musselburgh, it's like a big long double-ended sleeve, I guess, and so it'll end up being double layered. So it's going to be super warm. And it's got a slight halo, which is really nice. And the possum does that. And also, I did a new cast on. I've joined the DRK March to May knit along because I was looking for a deadline. But I really shouldn't have taken this on because I really want to work on this sweater spin that I'm doing, because I'd really like to finish that sweater by end of May. That would be crazy. So I've started Thru lines. Now, I don't know if you know Andrea Mulray of Drea, Renee Knits. Really nice design, a great vlog. It's just really, I've learnt so much listening to those. But if you're not on her newsletter, I do recommend joining because you get a 25% discount when you well, just every now and again she has discounts, but also when new patterns come out. So here's the bowl of all the yarns I started. So I got these that I started this with. So this is bone. These are from Black Wattle yarns. This is a blue one, I can't remember the name. And this very beautiful, I think it's Sequoia is the colourway. Now this is a lace weight one, and so it's a 4-ply or fingering weight pattern, and I thought I'll hold 2 together. These are fingering weight. It's not really working very well because the 2-ply, the lace weight, it's just not plump, and the other ones are kind of plump. So I'm not sure that it's working that well, but also I think I decided the blue's not the right blue, it's the wrong sort of tone. It's a little bit too solid. There's like a softness in the Sequoia colourway that is just not quite there in the blue. So this is kind of how it started. And I don't know, the blue's okay, but also this, I think it's not as kind of snuggly. So this is all just test swatching really here, not for gauge, but just for fabric. And so I added a mohair in here, And it has kind of given it more squishy plumpness that I quite like, but I don't actually want to have it with mohair because around my neck it is I find it a little scratching, and so I just tend to not wear things like that. So you'll like commiserate in the tragedy of this. I have to go look for some other yarn. And in Canberra next weekend is a 2-day Australian yarn show, which I'm booked into for both days. And so I'm going to take this project and try and find me the right blue and see if I can find, instead of a silk mohair fluff, I'm going to see if I can find an alpaca fluff that maybe won't be so scratchy. I don't find mohair super scratchy, but for a warm neck thing, I think it'll just be a little bit too much. I do have one scarf with mohair that I just don't wear very often because it's a bit scratchy when I get warm. So now I'm just rambling. That's what I've been making. Just thinking if there was something else. No, so yeah, I'm working away on the spin, but that's very slow progress. Looking around thinking there must be more. I don't think so. That's the thing I finished this week. It's not a making thing, but I'm going to share it anyway. So I don't know if you've heard of 75 Hard. I must say it belongs a bit in a kind of like a bro culture that I don't really like, and actually have some reasonable critiques of. But it's a mental discipline training, and just kind of I heard about it at this time when I was thinking a lot about mental discipline and how to maintain good habits for my own health and stress levels as I move between places, because I find it easier to kind of have good habits at home when my routine's really stable. But knowing that I was going to be moving between places, being overseas, just having to do different things, I was like, I don't want to drop the things I do to take care of my body because I have like health issues I need to manage through good practice, and also I'm going off to do really intense body-based research, and I really need to make sure my body doesn't fall apart, or like that just kind of stay as healthy as I can. And that it's a bit stressful too, right, doing a PhD. And so just really thinking a lot about how can I build my own mental discipline to keep those habits up when things are a bit more chaotic. So anyway, I started 75 Hard. And so basically it's this thing where there's 7 things you have to do in a day, and you have to do them every day for 75 days. And some of them are not, they're not even a thing, like you don't drink alcohol. And so I very rarely drink anyway. So I was like, it was really not a big deal. But 2 workouts a day, and workout, they can be whatever you like really, but 45 minutes each. One has to be outside, and drinking 3 litres of water a day, reading 10 pages of self-help or non-fiction, following a diet. It could be any diet, but it has to be like a health diet, not a Devonshire tea diet. That'd be nice. Anyway, I finished my 75 days yesterday. And I have to say I'm really glad I finished. And it was really useful. So I don't know, I really liked the program actually for that period. And yeah, I would recommend it. If you're looking to build your own mental discipline around being able to do hard things, I definitely noticed an increase in my capacity to do hard things. And I was shocked by the difference that 3 litres of water a day makes. And also, I got into yoga nidra a lot with it. And I have to say my flexibility is like through the roof. The change in my flexibility has been really great. And I think I really have experienced the stress benefits of more movement. I've been concerned about enough movement. Just as a crafter, and my job, my studies, my favourite crafting hobbies, they're all sedentary. And so knowing the health risks of sedentary lifestyle, I'm always like, how do I get more movement in? And so just really noticing also the benefits of much more movement. So that's been really great. I really like it, and I'm so glad it's over. And after I finish recording this video, I'm going to a cafe and I'm going to have a piece of cake, or I'm going to go get an ice cream or a cookie or something, because I haven't been able to eat anything sweet for 75 days, which has also been great because it's not that good for me. But so I'm looking forward to that. So it was great, and I'm glad it's over. Yeah, I think that's my week. Yeah, thanks for listening in, and yes, please do share your thoughts about this explosion of cottagecore and the whole hand making thing, and what do you think is behind it. I am interested in all the wild and wacky ideas, and also anything you just think is like glaringly obvious. Yeah, I'll be back next week, and thanks for watching. Okay, bye.